War pugs. Modern art. Trash or just a psyop to break our minds? Guys, I like art, but I like actual art. The images of a guy stacking 10 buckets of sand until they fall over and then taking a bow to the applause of people are forever burned into my head. As well as some other like modern art situations where a guy took his glasses off and put them down on the floor and then started rubbing his chin like this was an art piece. And everybody started joining in and talking about how philosophical it was. If you've seen modern art, it's a tragedy. Like, I don't understand it anymore. I just don't understand it. And maybe he's talking about something different, but the way people do these days and the things that people do and call it art, it's like, yeah, but is it really? Is it really? Is watching 10 buckets fall over some kind of symbol or, like, it's just so vapid. Anyhow, Warpugs, it's time to pay attention to what the Fat Electrician has to say. And understand that we are here and existence requires art. But we need to understand if we're being targeted by the feds or not. Here we go. Fat Electrician. All of his links are going to be in the description below. I don't understand why I did the rant at the beginning, but I'm an idiot, so you guys will let it pass. Like, subscribe. Let's get going.
In a turn of events that absolutely nobody saw coming, I think I like modern art now. Today we're talking about modern art and the historically supported objective fact that the CIA used it as a psychological operation to defeat communism.
Really?
That's not a joke. Just so we're on the same page, I keep saying modern art, and I'm going to keep saying modern art, but more specifically, I'm talking about abstract expressionism, which is a subcategory of modern art. So for this, think of it as like the Jackson Pollock type stuff. You know, the stuff you look at and you're like, wow, that's worth $200 million, and I'm pretty sure my 3-year-old could do it.
Yes.
That type of art. And to be completely honest with you, I had every intention of this just being an 8 to 10 minute video of me talking smack about modern art and how dumb I think it is, and over the course of researching for this video, I have had a complete 180 change of heart. Not only do I think that modern art is pretty cool now, I was so compelled that I went out and bought my own piece of modern art. That's how great this
propaganda is working. Something's happening to our boy.
Story actually is. And we're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsors. This video is brought to you by Zaka Life Go Balm. It is a full spectrum hemp oil recovery balm
in the description, guys,
on any type of athletic injury, and it's going to work better than any other type of ointment that you've ever tried. I've been using it for over a year, and whether it's old chronic injuries flaring up again or new and exciting injuries, this stuff helps either way. They're a small business based right here out of America. All their products are made here. So if you want to check them out, I'll have a link in the description down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, let's just take it from the top. World War II ends. The Cold War pretty much immediately starts, right? We split Germany right down the middle. We've got East Side versus West Side, just like Biggie and Tupac. But instead of rappers, we have communism versus capitalism. They are going to be competing at literally everything under the sun. Okay, most people think about Cold War and it's like, who has the best weapons? Who has more nuclear bombs? That's true, but there's also the culture war. America and the Soviet Union are competing against one another at absolutely everything possible. This is why we have awesome movies like Miracle, because America needs to beat the Soviet Union at hockey, and we need to win the most.
Miracle is one of the best cheesy documentary movies I've ever seen. But the actual story of what Miracle's based off of is seriously a modern day David and Goliath in the sports category. People say that, oh, this upset is the biggest upset ever. No, the biggest upset ever happened in 1984 when the United States team beat the Russian team at hockey. The same Russian team had trounced the NHL All-Stars to the point of embarrassment during a game, like an exhibition game they had played. And then a bunch of college kids went up against quite literally the best team in the world and beat them to take gold in the Olympics. So they didn't beat them to take the gold, they beat them to get into the medal category, and then they beat another team later. But the sheer fact of the matter was that you could, it would be like, there's no analogy for how outrageous it was for these two teams to play and the one to lose. There's no analogy I can come up with that's better than that.
most Olympic medals, and we have to have the best art and the best music and the best economy. It is a cultural war on everything. Now, some of these cultural battlefields are going to be way tougher than others. For example, the Olympics is going to be unbelievably tough because the USSR is just going to go in and give all their athletes funding, and it's going to be their full-time job to train to be an Olympic athlete 30 hours a day. On battlefields like this, there's not a lot the American government can do to ensure victory other than sit back, cross their fingers, and hope to God a genetic freak of nature like Dan Gable wanders out of a cornfield and wins Olympic gold at wrestling without giving up a single point. So in things like sports, it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. It's a good old-fashioned shootout, but on other battlegrounds that have a less defined rule set, America's gonna cheat its ass off every way it can.
True.
You're goddamn right.
And two of these extremely important yet undefined battlegrounds are art and music, and America doesn't want to go toe-to-toe with the Soviets in, say, music on a category like classical music because, well, the Soviets are going to do the same thing they do with their Olympic teams. They're going to take a one-year-old that can barely walk, shove a violin in their hands, and make them play it 18 hours a day till they become the best violinists on earth by the time they're 7. And the American government basically has a strategy of like, yeah, no thank you, we're just going to take something the Soviets don't have and make it extremely popular, and that way we win automatically. So the government, by way of the CIA, takes a bunch of money and funnels it into the jazz industry. They take the best artists like Louis Armstrong and send him on global tours all around Europe and every other country they can get into, showing off this new style of music and making it popular across the globe. And it's something that the Soviets just aren't going to be able to compete with. And jazz ends up inspiring rock and roll. And then rock and roll ends up inspiring metal. And next thing you know, it's 1991 and Metallica is having a concert in the USSR with 1.6 million people in attendance, and 3 months later, the USSR falls. Coincidence? I think not. And they had this.
No, like, so if you want to see something insane, like absolutely insane, look up Metallica's concert in Moscow. There are so many people there, it's just awe-inspiring. And they're losing their minds. It's the first time I ever watched that, I was just sitting there just looking at the screen like, what am I seeing? They put it on the 6 o'clock news.
Same exact strategy with art, okay? What are the Soviets good at? They're good at the traditional stuff, that old school realism, okay? Which, let's be honest, kind of not super needed anymore ever since we invented fucking cameras. So the American government is like, well, what do we have that's different?
True, but at the same time, realism is good for other things like fantasy characters and things like that, which I'm a massive fan of.
Let's back that. We are going to back modern art, which is abstract expressionism, where it's literally just art for the sake of art. That's literally the definition of abstract expressionism. It's just doing it because you want to do it, because you're expressing yourself through some medium in some fashion, and that's where you get things like Jackson Pollock paintings. He's just expressing himself. Now, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. However, it is a humongous deal because that's exactly the type of thing that you can't do over in the Soviet Union, pursuing a passion project to make a living. Now, can you be an artist? Absolutely. You could be an artist in the Soviet Union and get by just fine, provided that you're exclusively willing to paint hyper-realistic pictures of our glorious leader. And if you get bored with that, you're probably allowed to paint some pictures of our astronauts not landing on the moon first. Or maybe, if you get really bored, you could paint some muscle mommy holding a shovel, or maybe a bunch of workers returning home from the fields, but they all better have fucking smiles on their faces. So that's the angle that the US government's gonna take. They're gonna show off modern art, because modern art is nothing other than art for the sake of art. It is a symbol of freedom. It's not this tired ass stuff the Soviets are doing, this take a picture of me but do it with paint nonsense. All their artists over there with their techniques and their well-refined skills. No, this is America. We're gonna throw shit at the wall and we're gonna win anyways. I mean paint at the canvas. We're gonna throw paint at the canvas and we're gonna win anyways.
There you go.
How do you know when you're done with a painting?
How do you know when you're done making love?
Oh, when you wash your penis in the sink and go to bed.
If we can't dazzle them with our intellect, we're going to baffle them with our bullshit. So that's the official plan of the US government. All we have to do is make this shit popular somehow. How are they going to do it? That's easy. Copious amounts of taxpayer money. So that's what the US government does. Right after World War II, 1946-ish, they just start pumping money into modern art, trying to get as many eyes on it as humanly possible and making it seem as cool as possible. And it was not well received pretty much by anybody. Even the art community was divided. Half the art community hated this stuff, okay? They felt like it undermined the rest of art, which makes sense, right? You spent your whole life developing this skill set, you make beautiful paintings, and then out of nowhere, here comes this Jackson Pollock guy in his drip phase, and he's just fucking overhanding paint at a canvas, not even bothering to pick the dead flies up out of it, and all of a sudden he's more famous than you are. It's absurd.
Like, here's the thing. I can't even draw stick figures, but I can do abstract art.
And that's just the criticism they're getting from their own community. Once the church-going, more conservative crowd gets a hold of this shit, they lose their mind. They fucking hate it.
One of the many tools of the devil.
Because you gotta realize from this, like, church-going conservative viewpoint, the majority of artists, generally speaking, have always been more left-leaning, which is completely fine. But in this instance, the majority of these abstract expressionist artists that are blowing up are, like, borderline communist sympathizers, or some of them are even self-proclaimed communists. I mean, Jackson Pollock worked on a May Day float depicting the workers overthrowing Wall Street. Like, they have some pretty controversial political opinions. So, from the perspective of this church-going conservative, it is literally a bunch of commies trying to destroy art. And they're using our tax dollars to do it. We can't allow this to happen. It's a slippery slope. First you let them call this art, then they're going to be having concerts called Woodstock and putting flowers in their hair and smoking weed and having unprotected sex, and then Forrest Gump's girlfriend's going to get AIDS. It's going to ruin the entire world. Okay, to be fair, they weren't actually worried about Jenny, but there was a bunch of conspiracy theories going around, and one of the biggest ones was that because a lot of the artists doing this type of art were communist sympathizers, is that this weird abstract art form was some way for them to convey secret messages back to the Soviet Union. Maybe these were like maps of secret US military installations.
I love the fact that he put some sort of message in there. Hold on a second, we gotta find it now.
Is back to the Soviet Union.
Alright, so we gotta back it up because he put something in there in one frame and I saw it.
Secret messages back. Convey secret messages back to the Soviet Union. Maybe these were...
Yep, hold on. Okay, come on. Where is it? Okay, I got to play this game now because now he's giving me a challenge.
This weird abstract art form was some way for them to convey secret messages back to the Soviet Union. Maybe...
There we go. Come on. Okay, a little bit too far back. Come on. It's in...
Maybe these were like maps of secret US military installations and they were all spies gathering intel, and this is how they shared it back to the USSR. Absolutely no merit to it whatsoever, but those were the types of things that people were saying. So due to the pretty violent backlash from all directions, the US government has to abandon this project and quit putting money into it almost immediately. So now the US government is in this situation where they have something that they want to do, but literally none of their constituents want them to do it. So clearly, they're not gonna do it. The video's over. That's it. The end. No, I'm just fucking kidding. Obviously, they're going to use the CIA and do it anyways and then just not tell anybody about it.
Okay.
That's just how the government gets down, apparently. So in 1950, the CIA helps fund and set up this new organization called the CCF, the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And this isn't just for art. This is going to be a gigantic shell corporation that the government pumps money into to attack everything communist in culture. This is going to be an anti-communist propaganda-making machine. At its peak, the CCF operated in over 35 different countries. They owned and published over 30 different magazines. They owned entire news outlets. They're promoting anti-communist books, music, art, intellectuals, anything they can do to fight the communist ideology, they're doing, and they're funneling it all through the CCF. And this was deemed so successful overall that the CIA website actually says, and I quote, "The Congress for Cultural Freedom is widely considered one of the CIA's most daring and effective Cold War covert operations." So the CCF is huge, but we're focusing on art, and art has a unique issue in that modern art is already deemed super controversial, so they don't want the CCF to come out and support it directly, so they have to figure out a way to support it indirectly. So the CIA goes out and they're like, okay, well, we're going to get all these art foundations that already exist to work with us. Unfortunately, most of them didn't want to work with the CIA because it's, well, A, they're a bureaucratic nightmare, and B, most of them didn't like modern art. So at this point...
And it's the CIA.
The CIA is like, fuck it, we'll just make our own art foundation. So they go and they approach like a bunch of super wealthy people in New York City, and they're like, hey, start up an art foundation. We'll do all the work. We'll do all the paperwork. We're just going to funnel a bunch of money and art through this foundation. I'm sure you'll end up getting like tax write-offs or something. So all the rich people are like, dope. Absolutely, go ahead. And they do this like 50 times. They amass a gigantic network of phony art foundations where they use that to just funnel money directly into modern art. Okay, they're funding the artists, they're giving away rewards, they're buying the artwork, they're donating it. Then they go to the museums and they get the museums in on it. Now the museums are going to be disproportionately showing modern art more than anything else, inflating its popularity. But that's not where it stops, because now the CCF can get involved. Now that it's like 2 to 3 degrees removed, we're going to bring the CCF in with their 20 magazines and their news outlets, and we're going to have the magazines start publishing articles about all these modern artists and how great all this art is. And then, if any art critics want to have their opinions published in any of these 20 magazines or covered by the news, they better have the right fucking opinion about modern art. So the CIA forces this into the mainstream, and it's everywhere in all the media all the time, and everybody sees it. And this is like the peer pressure effect, right? You see this in all the magazines, all the art critics love it. Eventually you're like, shit, am I the only person that thinks this is dumb? If everybody else likes it, I don't want to be the only uncultured swine that looks at something.
I will be an uncultured swine if you don't appreciate modern art just like I do. I will be an uncultured swine with you.
And that I think my 3-year-old can do and like doesn't understand the deeper meaning. So I'm just gonna lie and pretend and say that I like it too, just so I'm part of the cool kid group. So I'm deep and thoughtful and sophisticated. So
yeah,
people started to like modern art. It's like candy corn, okay? I know that candy corn tastes like shit. I've never met a single person in my entire life that actually liked candy corn. Yet somehow, some way, every October, it's absolutely everywhere. It's got the best marketing on the planet for no apparent reason. I don't even know what company makes candy corn, yet it's everywhere all the time for the entire month of October.
Right.
Fuck, candy corn's got to be a psyop too. It's got to be like nuclear waste. That's how the government gets rid of it.
It definitely is.
But anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted.
Now, I can't prove that candy corn is a psyop yet. I'm going to look into it. I'm upset about this now. But we do know for a fact that modern art was a psyop, or at least its rise to fame was a psyop. And we know this because in 1966, the New York Times had found out that the CIA helped make the CCF, and they ran it as a story. Now, they only knew about the CCF. They didn't know about all the other extra stuff that they did in the art community with the founding of all these different shell art foundations. That didn't come out until the 1990s. But it did get the ball rolling for a bunch of conspiracies, because now the art community is super skeptical of abstract expressionism. Now, it just didn't make sense from their point of view. You know, usually, typically speaking, it's almost common knowledge that most artists don't get super famous until after they die. Yet somehow all the major abstract expressionists, Jackson Pollock, de Kooning, Rothko, these guys were all superstars during their lifetime. They had multiple page spreads in magazines. They were making tons of money. They were rich. They were famous. It just made zero sense, historically speaking. Because of this, a lot of people in the art community thought for sure the government had to be behind it. In 1974, famous art critic Max Kuzlov said that it was, quote, a benevolent form of propaganda. And here's the kicker with this. We don't know to what degree the artists that benefited the most from this actually knew that they were being used by the CIA, because as far as they probably knew, they just received a bunch of money from some art foundation owned by some rich guy. They didn't know that that rich guy was actually working with the CIA. On the flip side of that, maybe they...
And did they care?
They did know the entire time, and some people cite the fact that Jackson Pollock later in his life denounced communism as evidence of that. However, in my personal opinion, I don't really buy it. I think these guys had no clue, and I think that Jackson Pollock denounced communism later in life because he got famous and rich as fuck. I mean, the dude was selling paintings for $8,000, which if you adjust for inflation is like 95 grand, okay? He had a lot of money, and let's just call a spade a spade. Every young college kid wants to share the wealth, and then they get a little bit older, and it becomes their wealth that needs to get shared, and then their opinions change.
Yes.
Now, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. However, I hope I'm right for a couple of reasons. One, I personally just find it funny that the US government was using unwitting communists.
This is the thing about, oh God, this is the thing. Everybody's always happy to spend somebody's money as long as it's not theirs. Everybody's always happy to spend money until it's theirs. Everybody's always happy to ignore a problem until it becomes their problem, and then it becomes a real problem.
Sympathizers to fight against communism by showing off all the freedoms they have because they didn't live under communism. To me, That's art. And B, and also another reason that I think I'm correct, is that I think the CIA knew that this art couldn't be propaganda. I mean, they were going to use it as propaganda, and they knew that, but it was very important with the creation of the art that the artist had no idea that it was being used for propaganda. It needed to be a true, authentic expression of that person, because that's what made this art so effective, is that we were showing off freedom, the freedom of self-expression.
Yeah.
That's what abstract expressionism is all about.
I get it.
So if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, what I'm trying to tell you is that when most people think of the Cold War, they think of an arms race between America and the Soviet Union. Who can have the most nukes? Who can have the most fighter jets? Who can come up with the best, most creative, efficient way to kill the enemy? But at the end of the day, that was a moot point from the get-go, because there was always mutually assured destruction between America and the USSR should it devolve to a hot conflict. And what actually won the Cold War was the culture war. Because when it came time for the USSR to fall in 1991, they didn't want to drag America down with them, because everybody in the Soviet Union was wearing blue jeans, drinking Pepsi, listening to Metallica, and Gorbachev himself was doing fucking Pizza Hut commercials.
Yep.
Это Горбачев.
They didn't want to destroy America because they wanted to be like America, or at the very least, they recognized the fact that the world was a better place with America in it. The Cold War wasn't won by having the most nuclear warheads. It wasn't won by putting a man on the moon first. It was won with blue jeans, junk food, music, and art. And to quote JFK, art is not a form of propaganda. It is a form of truth. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang. Out. Like a week ago, I would have done nothing but made fun of modern art. Now look at me. Look at this. It's beautiful. I love it. It speaks to me. I like what it...
Wait.
I like what it has to say.
Warpugs, it's amazing the levels that people went to and the things that we have done to basically fight back against our I can't speak English. Authoritarianism, which it kind of shocks me how somebody said, "Oh, look, squiggly lines on a canvas. Let's go." Maybe I should do some modern art. Maybe I should do that. I could actually do it too. Paint my face green and headbutt a canvas until I'm satisfied. Turn around and sell it on eBay. Warpugs, I'm going to take off from here. All of the Fat Electrician's links are in the description down below. If you have not subscribed to him, subscribe to both Fat Electrician, the Fat Electrician channel, and the Fat Files. Fat Electrician, history, mostly military, mostly United States. Fat Files, companies, topics that he finds interesting, which is always fantastic. I'm going to head out from here, Warpugs. I hope you have a wonderful day. And to every father out there, happy Fathers. And I'll catch you, Warpugs.